Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CaUltra. On this episode, we are going to break down the Toronto Ultra's incredible and at some point slightly disappointing performance at Champs. I think for the most part, there's a lot of positives to take away, and I think we're both pretty happy with it, although it didn't necessarily end the way that we wanted to. And we're also going to give our sort of final preview for Champs, so stay tuned for that. I am one of your hosts, as always, Spencer, and with me is Chris. Chris, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. This week's turning out to be one of the last great weeks of August. And I'm super excited for not only this up-and-coming Champs weekend, but also some Overwatch playoffs too.
Overwatch playoffs and also Call of Duty Champs. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff for esports coming on here, and I'm super excited. So, I mean, with that out of the way, let's just sort of jump into this thing. I guess I want to start this show off by just sort of giving our... I know we did a whole episode about our expectations of the Toronto Ultra, but I think it's important to just briefly kind of like recap. What was your feeling going into Champs before Game 1 versus London?
My feeling going into Champs, going into Champs against London was that we were either going to perform quite well, or we were going to perform less than we should have, like below our normal benchmark. And it's hard to pinpoint where our benchmark is because, we did end off the season on a high, but we were, for the most part, during most of the season, not playing too well. So it's hard to identify where that benchmark was. I think we ended just pretty much on the benchmark of where I kind of expected them to end, but I will talk a little bit more about those last couple games later. And
yeah. Because I think you're right about that. I think it was important to note that this team, while it did end on a high with, again, winning arguably the hardest tournament of the entire year and securing their top 8 finish by beating, teams like Dallas Empire, Chicago Huntsmen, although there's a bit of an asterisk around that, as well as the Atlanta FaZe, this wasn't a top 4 team, right? Like all the way up until sort of that final tournament. All year long, there's a reason why we had to win that final tournament in order to get top 8. It's because we were in the bottom, 2 going into it. So I agree that like I had this like air of optimism around me, but at the same time, I was like, man, there is definitely a possibility that we just get double bounced. You know what I mean? That there was just teams who were like, I don't want to say taking it easy, but definitely weren't in their full, giving 110% in that final tournament because they'd already clinched, the top 4 position. They were sort of just waiting for Champs. And yeah, I thought we'd beat London, but I was a little concerned about our chances.
Yeah, exactly. I think I think our expectations got set quite high with the last 2 tournaments of the season. We got really hyped. Yeah. And if my expectations were taken from a picture of the whole season, I'd say we end up really well in this tournament. And I'd also say that despite our 2 losses, the one against Florida all but pretty much made up for that.
For sure.
2 unfortunate losses. But just because, I have such high expectations for the team, everybody's been hyped up on them, and considering their performance the last 2, I was very, very, very slightly disappointed. Like I said, I think there's some very good aspects, though.
100%. So let's just jump right into the first match then. We've mentioned it before. Toronto Ultra opened up with the game versus the London Royal Ravens, in which we actually ended up winning 3-1. Now, 3-1 was sort of what I predicted, although, to be honest, I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a convincing 3-1. I was drinking the Ultra Kool-Aid pretty heavily right up until that match started, and I think it started the way that I thought it would start. You know what I mean? We win that first hard point in incredibly convincing fashion. We knew that London was a really bad domination team. I was feeling extremely confident. I was like, you know what? We took that first hard point. I was actually thinking we were going to get to 3-0. Like, I actually sort of had it in my head. London would win the first hard point. Then we'd win search, dom, and pull out the last hard point. That's how we'd win 3-1. And when we won the first hard point in the way that we did, I was like, you know what? This game's already in the bag. And London kind of said no by winning that search and destroy. So what were some of the things that you think really went wrong in that search that allowed London to like really turn it around?
Well, yeah, that's a pretty specific question, but I think the point is that London did a lot of work studying Cammy and how good and how well he performed in the last tournament, and they're ready for him. I think that Cammy did have a bounce back towards the end of the search and destroy with getting a 4 kill, almost an ace.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
At that point, it was a little too late. I think it was 5-2 at that point. They made their clear mark ahead of us. What they did is they they studied us well, and also I think that when it came to our strategies, we tried a strategy, worked once, and then we just kept on using it over and over, kind of bashed our heads against the wall. And once they found that, kind of attuned to it and countered it, we didn't have a counter to that counter. So I
Yeah.
think that unfortunately this S&D was a little bit telling of all the S&Ds to come for the rest of the tournament,
Yeah,
because I think S&D was a quite a low performer for us, and
I agree.
I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah, and I think that it was one of those things too where London is a good S&D team. Like I don't want to knock London in terms of their ability to win on S&D. I just sort of thought that you're right. Like all year long, we had been such a good S&D team that I sort of thought that we'd carry that into champs. And I wonder if we just like blew our load essentially in the tournament previously, like our homestand to get that victory and showed
Yeah.
all of our best strategies because it just seemed like every team was ready for us. Like even when we won, we had to play incredibly well to pull up that S&D victory, which I believe we did versus Florida. But we'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, anyway, so we lose to London on Search and Destroy, and then we took the domination, which I sort of figured. But the issue with losing that to Search was sort of like London had picked that hard point, and we won, and we had picked the Search. So I thought this is a 3-0. I was like, this is our best Search. You're right? Like Cammy can really pop off. He's, in my opinion, one of the best Search and Destroy players in the entire league. And when we lost our map pick, I started to get a little bit concerned. So we go in there, we win domination. I mean, I think London was just a poor domination team for a long time. It's seemingly been their kryptonite. They were like 2-9 going into that tournament. They only won one, which we'll get to later. So we take that victory, which is to be expected. I think the team was playing really well as a whole. I think Kleenex obviously was showing what he could do. I think he had an amazing champs. Cammy was popping off. This was actually one of Method's good games. I think the first time he played London, so that was really well. And Bance and Classic were kind of doing their thing. The big controversy of this game obviously stems from when you get into map 4, which was, I think I was like, okay, like we have to close out this hard point, right? We're going into Gunrunner S&D, I believe, for map 5. That was London's pick. They have a really good Gunrunner S&D, and I thought that this was sort of our hard point to take over. And we played well, but man, was it close, right? And then obviously you can't talk about this game without mentioning Zero legging out, but going into that moment, I still thought that we had a fighting chance. Like I think a lot of people had just written us off, like because London did have the rotations, but we sort of had set up because we had spawns and we were rotating towards like those last couple points. But
well, it seems like for me the trade-offs between London and Toronto is Toronto's playing a lot for spawns.
Yeah,
They but Toronto's playing more for kill feed. So you'd see the kill feed light up with London, but you notice that Toronto would still be able to squeak in spawns and be really annoying and be able to get lots of points without getting lots of kills.
yeah.
Which I think benefited us in other games like the Florida game and to some extent the Dallas game.
Yeah.
But just preset this up when they came back to play against London and tried it out, it didn't quite work.
Yeah, and they had everyone was sort of complaining because obviously Zero legs out and London has a 20-point lead. But it's also important to note that they had a 20-point lead after holding Tire Shop for like the entire 60 seconds, right? Like it's like a little bit standard to have like a 20-point lead after you hold that for all 60. Like by no means was this map over. Like I got in a couple arguments online, which I try not to do, but people sort of just saying, man, if Zero didn't leg out, London would have won that match. And I'm like, that's like incredibly disrespectful, one, to the Toronto Ultra, but two, to just like what was going on in that situation. Like, was London in the advantage? Absolutely. I think that it was probably more likely that they would have won than lost, but they also would have had to then go in and clutch the Gunrunner. And like, yeah, I know that was their map pick and they had a good Gunrunner S&D, but at the same time, like, we lost our S&D map pick too. Like at some point, people just pop off during champs and like stuff happens, right? So I was trying to explain statistics to people where I was like, even if you say it's a 70% chance that London wins that final hard point, which I think is a little generous given the current situation, and a 60% chance they win Gunrunner S&D, that's still a 42% chance they win the map. So while it was extremely unfortunate, and I'm not trying to make any excuses whatsoever, I can't imagine being in London's situation and how frustrating that would be. I think it's disingenuous to not really give Toronto the credit that they were in to put themselves in a very like advantageous position to begin with. So obviously we know how it ends. Zero legs out, Toronto clutches up. It's super unfortunate, but at the end of the day, like we take those. You know what I mean? Like I'm glad that changes were made from the CDL to pre-record the matches so that the DDoSing didn't continue to occur. But I was just happy to see that we did get the win, and it was super unfortunate, but like I guess London got the revenge in the end, right? So.
Exactly. So you want to move on and talk about Toronto versus Florida now?
Yeah, this was probably the match of the entire tournament, right? Like I think if you ask
most people, it was the match of the tournament just because of how
For us, at least.
creative and amazing our plays were. I think that there's two maps here essentially where we pulled something literally out of our butts. Azure Cave, hardpoint, where Toronto won pretty much via perfect rotations.
Which
And
I
I know
can't believe
that
we
most
picked
of-
Cave, by the way. That was the first time I've seen Cave the entire
Yes.
year. Like, when was the last time we played Cave?
Yeah, I've seen Cave a couple times, and I've just seen Toronto get slapped. So
Yeah.
when they pick Cave, I'm like, oh no, this is an instant loss. And
Yeah,
you know
no.
what? Shout out to Florida. They still came back and they almost won it.
That was extremely
Um,
close.
And I know that COD lost their stream, but just looking at how wellly timed the rotations were from Toronto really showed that they've been practicing this and they had this in their back pocket against Florida, which I think was a smart play against Florida, to pick that Cave because they knew that they were going to have to catch them off guard and essentially steal a map off of them to be able to get close to beating a good team like Florida.
Completely agree. And I think this was another situation where we see later on, it seemed like Toronto had showed all their tricks on all these other maps and teams were ready. So it was really cool that they were able to sort of pick Cave, where a lot of teams didn't have, at this point, any tape with Kleenex in the lineup. I think that was the first time we played Cave with Kleenex in the lineup. I could be wrong on that. But anyways, it was one of the few times. So we were actually able to show some looks that I think other teams weren't expecting. Now that I can't say the same thing when we played Dallas on Cave, the game after, but for this first time, yeah, it was the first time any team had seen us on it, so we were actually able to catch them off guard and sort of steal a win. I think it was fun because I think this was arguably Method's worst game I've seen him play, unfortunately, and it was arguably Kleenex's best game I've seen him play, right? It was sort of those, man, Methods has been really good all year long. I have a lot of good things to say about Methods, both as a player and as a person. He came on the show. I think that was a great interview. You guys haven't checked that out, you should. Super great person. But when we first played this team, I was concerned because I knew that Methods can sometimes struggle when he goes up against a team with like really, really good ARs. And having to go Florida and then Dallas back to back, I was like, man, this is going to be tough for him. And I think you saw it because like Florida's ARs are just so good. And he really struggled to put up points. Like I think his KD ended up being like a 0.62 on the entire match, which like is really hard from one of your best players, especially a main AR who like your job's kind of to be like consistent and just, you know what I mean? Like holding on those sidelines and getting those picks or getting those trade-offs. So if the 0.6 is like, when I looked at that, I would have thought, oh man, there's no way we won this match, right? Method's putting up a 0.6. It's going to be like a 3-1 Florida,
yeah.
But this just really turned into the Kleenex show. This might have been the best game I think Kleenex has ever seen. Where it seemed like a lot of different people were sort of struggling to put up, impressive performances. Cleanup puts up a 1.24, the highest by far in the match. I think like low key, if you look at the slaying, it's sort of like Toronto arguably didn't have any real reason to win this game, but just because of their like strategy. And also their like Kleenex just really being that like entry sub that they needed, it just opened up so much space on the map, and they were just able to win so many key fights, and that's why they were able to take this game. Because you're right, Florida shut us down on Piccadilly, right? Once again, we picked Piccadilly, Rand came in the sniper, the same way we were able to do so well for our homestand, but teams were just ready, and they absolutely shut us down. So I think that this has to, like, Kleenex needs to get MVP for this match because that was, I don't want to say a one-man show, but it was close. Cammy showed up too. I'll give Cammy the credit he deserves, but man, if Kleenex doesn't put up those incredible performances, I think we lose this game.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Cammy did show up on definitely certain parts, but once again on S&D, we were kind of getting splattered again because it was so hard for us to get those entry picks on the sniper like we were able to in our homestands. And we can't talk about this match without talking about the last St. Patrick at Hardpoint. Toronto won 250 versus
I forgot how insane that was.
Florida 249. I remember I was on chat with a couple people and we were screaming into the mics. That was amazing. Their play to decide to, instead of all five rushing in through the one choke, to take a little bit more time and create a pinch play, to be able to steal the flag for long enough that they were able to get that 149 and then finally cap the 250 with good rotations was amazing for me.
Yeah, and
it showed cool, calm, poised mentality under a very, very stressful situation.
I was just going to say that. I was like, that just really speaks to some of the calm heads, and you saw it whenever they did the Astro listen-ins, right? They'd cut to our comms, and it was just incredibly cool, calm, and collected. I think that's a big strength of this team that like not a lot of people were talking about, and I think it's a big reason why you're right, we were able to pull this win. And we kind of got lucky twice. Like even if you go back to Cave, it was almost a very similar situation. The only difference was Florida didn't get the tick, right? So because Florida didn't get the tick, they didn't cap it on that point. We were able to cap the next one. And on the final one, we did get the tick and we just won, two. No. Sorry. I messed it up. Sorry. Florida didn't get taken the final one. In the first one, we got the tick. So Florida was re-rotating to the next hard point to set up their defense, thinking that we didn't have enough time, and then we just sat on point and capped it at 250, right? It was one of those where just like we got the tick, and then Florida didn't at the final one, and then our defense ended up working. So it's one of those things, man, where like the COD gods were just on our favor. We're just on our side, right? And it was such an incredible game. That was probably the best match I think I've ever seen, up there right with Atlanta FaZe versus Toronto for the homestand finale.
Exactly. That was absolutely amazing. So now Toronto versus Dallas. Now, this is one of our mixed games. I think there were
started
some
so
very
well.
Very, very positive things. Also some less positive things. But Spencer, tell me about some of the things you liked versus Dallas initially.
I think that, obviously I thought if we were going to win this game, we had to win the first hard point. We didn't. And as soon as we lost the first hard point, I my heart sunk and I was like, you know what, we're probably going to lose this game. But then we come back in that S&D and, our S&D had seemingly struggled all tournament long. And I think Classic just really showed up. I think Classic had a mixed tournament, I'll say. He had his moments. He had his off moments. But that's kind of been the story for Classic all year long. But for this specific Search and Destroy, he was on. And he was a major reason why we were able to take that victory versus the Dallas Empire. And then we get that one in our bag. And I'm like incredibly stoked. And then we go into Domination. And that was probably the best Domination I've ever seen. Not from like a fan excitement perspective, but from like a Call of Duty strategy perspective. Everybody was expecting the A-B hold. We started out at C. It looked like we were flipping A, and then everyone was expecting, okay, we lock down A and we go to B. CleanX wins some incredible gunfights. I think he picks 3 as Dallas is running from the right side to try to contest A. He picks 3 people off, which allows us to secure A, and then we just hold AC, which I had never seen in the Call of Duty League up until this point, and we just give them B and trap them in the top right corner of the map. So obviously if you're spawning top right, your only options are sort of to push C, and then we just had Cammy and someone else holding that down in 3 on A. Like, it was textbook Call of Duty in terms of like knowing the spawns and knowing how to like play the game, and I think it really caught Dallas off guard, and I think it stole the map for us. Like, that's just got to go out to the coaching staff or whoever thought of that, strategy, whoever brought that one up. Brilliant.
Well, it's smart, and I think it's something that's really kind of only replicable or only doable on this the Gunrunner, because Gunrunner. I think we played that was on Gunrunner. Yes,
it was Gunrunner. It was Gunrunner.
Because B, once you lock that down, it's so hard to cap that. It's so hard to take that back from somebody. People just have to throw tons of bodies. So you know what? Why throw all the bodies there? And when you can just do A and C at the same time.
Yeah,
and that's what I really like. Just on like, an interesting note that I thought of in terms of, Caves hard point. I think, how hard Dallas pub stomped us on Caves is a true testament to show how good the top 4 coaching staff is, because they had pretty much a turnaround time of like a day to be able to, go through our tape, figure out our strategies, and kind of create a counterplay off of that. And they did that so well. Dallas, they literally saw that play we made against Florida the day before. We thought, they can't have adapted that fast, but they did. That's what a really, really good top 4 team is the ability to adapt those plays within such a short time frame.
Yeah, I think that was the story of the tournament, was us just showing looks and not having enough looks to show. Like, we showed our hand once, and then Dallas read it, and then that we just had to show it again, right? It was the same with Piccadilly Search. It was the same with the hard point, and it was the same with the Domination, which we'll get to in the next map. But obviously, we win that Domination, and I'm pumped, right? I was like, what an incredible victory, and now we're up 2-1. Like, up until that moment, this had been like a Cinderella storybook like champs for Toronto, right? It was like, we win our final home, we get top 4 in the one homestand, then we win our homestand in the final tournament of the year. We go into champs, we beat London, we beat Florida, Cammy's popping off, CleanX is looking like an MVP candidate all of a sudden. I shouldn't say all of a sudden. He was always really, really good, but he's like legitimately establishing himself as an MVP candidate. And then we're up 2-1 versus the Dallas Empire. I'm like, are we actually going to get top 4? Not just top 4, but top 4 winners bracket? Are you kidding me? And then no, we don't. No, we do not. Toronto kind of just falls apart. I don't know. Some people were saying, did they switch servers? I don't know what happens. I mean, Methods had another, I think, poor performance. Again, he just struggles against teams with really, really good ARs. Dallas has some really good ARs there. It wasn't as bad as London. I'm not gonna, knock him that hard, but it also wasn't the, Methods we saw versus London. And I think the slang just kind of fell off. It just looked like we were just getting outgunned in every single team fight. And even if we tried to do a strategy, we couldn't implement it because in order to utilize that strategy, we had to win like 1 or 2 gunfights to set it up, and we just couldn't win them.
I think 2 thoughts on that. I think not more importantly, but also importantly, Kleenex's slaying fell off. And that's no shot to him. Like, he played so well. Like, you can't play that consistently through the whole tournament. And just no one was there to pick up his slack, unfortunately.
Yeah. When it's like when Kleenex is running in, so I'll give it to you in a second. But when Kleenex is running in there, and we have no map control because Bance, Classic, and Methods already lost their team fights. Like, he's running into like 3 guns, right? There's just not much you can do.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of Methods, I don't know. Like, I feel like maybe it's kind of like a meta thing because lots of times we'd see Methods, especially at the ends of S&D and stuff. But it was most prevalent in S&D, but he would be the last one in a 1v3, which is effectively useless. So I don't know if there's a problem with the pace of the game, and he's not running with the pace of the game as well
to get those trades.
It's because like the point of it's better to get a 1v3. It's better to trade out more, be there for the trades, and just lose faster.
Because it means
you have a better chance of winning than kind of waiting around and ending up in a 3v1. Yeah. And so I think his trades were kind of lacking in that area. And I don't know. I think it has something to do with the pace of the game.
It could be, for sure. And again, and I also, like, in his defense, I did think that stylistically, these are arguably the 2 worst teams that we matched up against. I would have much rather played FaZe. I would have much rather played Chicago. I know Methods always performs better versus those teams. It seems like when you go up against teams like really, really good ARs, you see New York as well. Like, you can kind of see the team as a whole struggles against it. But you're right. Like, being the last live in like a 3v1 situation is just like, it's kind of just an L anyway. So you might as well like have been traded out earlier or get the trade. But it's stylistically a poor matchup for Toronto as a whole, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what it is, and he still performs. And these are also some of the best teams. And Dallas Empire is a first or second team. Like,
and Florida was for that, arguably a top 4 team going into the tournament as well, right? So
yeah, so not a big knock on him, just an observation. Mm-hmm. Now moving on to London. London, I don't have any notes on because I was kind of pissed off the whole time.
I just got this. I got this one if you want to, and
No, I still have some thoughts on it, but
okay, go for it.
Yeah, so here's my thoughts. When we win by a little bit, and when we lose pretty hard, and it was quite dominant in this. And I think that's another supporting evidence in our theory that we just didn't have enough plays in the playbook. Because we, especially on S&D, once again, it's just so easy to be able to really do things S&D. We have 1 or 2 plays that work, and then they figure us out, and then it doesn't work, and that's why we get like 3-6, 4-6, 2-6 versus on S&Ds.
Yeah,
it's like we had those plays worked out for those 2v1, and then we didn't have any more plays, and we're putting our head against the wall. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like it was that against London. It seemed like, and not even for S&D, it was also for, I believe, it was on Gunrunner again. It was Dom Gunrunner or something. And we were throwing bodies at B the whole time, just getting domes, not slaying.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem like we were trying anything new the whole time. We only had that one play and it just wasn't working. So for me, it was just a clear kind of look that we, didn't look like we practiced enough, or we didn't have enough plays in the playbook. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this comes down to, again, this team does really well, and especially Cammy. I feel like Cammy does really well when Kleenex is frying. If Kleenex is performing at the level of which he can, it opens up the space on the map and it allows Cammy to like fry as well, right? Like, I think they work really well together in tandem because Kleenex can create the space and Cammy can capitalize off of it. And it's no knock on Kleenex. Like, it's unrealistic to expect Kleenex to put up 1.24s every single game, right? Yes, like, exactly. I love Kleenex, and I mean, I'm just going to say it right now. Like, I would absolutely love to see him in Toronto next year. Like, I think that this champs showed us some stuff about people who I think you can build a team around. I think he's one of them. But the problem is, like, he's not quite yet in a BZ. You know what I mean? He's not going to put up 1.24s every single match you play against any team any day of the week, right? Like, he's capable of it, and we've seen him do it, but every once in a while he's going to have an off game. He is human. So he had a bit of an off game, and that meant that Cammy couldn't capitalize on the space he was creating. So that meant that those two are sort of nullified a bit. And I think that Toronto just hit their ceiling, because if those two aren't popping off, we just don't have enough, I feel like, playmakers on the team to make up for what we lost if Kleenex isn't popping off, right? Because actually Methods versus London had a really good game, right? Put up like a 1.35. Like this is the if he had put up 1.35 versus Dallas, we probably win that game. So he had an insane game. And Kleenex was off, and again, it's fine. But the problem was, like, Banson Classic just couldn't pick up what we were missing with him being off, and I think that just cost us. And I think that the slaying wasn't there. So because Kleenex couldn't create the space, Cammy couldn't capitalize on it. It showed us that we needed a little bit more, playmakers in the team. It showed us again that the maps, we'd mentioned so many times, right? We tried the exact same domination strategy as we did versus Dallas, and London was like, yeah, we've seen that already. Obviously, we can't talk about this without one of the most unfortunate spawns I've ever seen in my entire life, where we legitimately locked down the AC setup, and all 4 London people spawn top right C, and 1 London person spawns back A, and just nobody expected it, and then he comes behind. Yeah. And instead of it, because even if London spawns all top 5 at the C flag and they rush C and they just absolutely fry us, at least we still have the A flag and we can try this A-B push because we started on A, right? But instead, they get 1 person in the back. He fries out A. Methods comes in, and I'll give him credit, with a huge 3Ps to turn it, and then drops the trophy and somehow dies to a grenade. So I don't know how that happened. Like, I don't know. Yeah. The game just kind of screwed him on that one. Because that was a really clutch 3-piece to potentially turn that match around, and then the grenade kills them, and then London gets the A spawns, and then they essentially just get the entire map with an A-B hold, and then we turned it around at the end, but it just wasn't enough, right? Like, our first hold was just so poor, and that really screwed us, because London was such a poor dom team that we needed to win domination, and us losing, like, really, it left such a sour taste in my mouth, where I was like, this was such a winnable game. And we kind of did throw it on top of, like, the spawn really did screw us. And I know everybody has a bad spawn, but this was like a really impactful spawn. So it's a combination of that, as well as a combination of us just not having enough looks to throw to, like, confused teams because they just read it. And then finally, you can't really mention this either without mentioning Shawnee absolutely fried us at the end. I don't know if the team was boomed or what it was, but maybe Shawnee just, God descended into the heavens from the heavens and, like, blessed him with the ability, because he went like 34 and 15 or 14, like putting up over a 2.0 KD is absolutely insane for a closeout match at Champ. So he deserves a ton of respect because he showed up.
Yeah, he definitely does. And you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, there's an old adage that I read the other day, being like, plans are useless, but planning is everything. And that's exactly what they should plan for. Plan A is to cap A and C again. It didn't work out. Plan B, throw bodies at B. Didn't work out. Clearly, they should have maybe had a plan C there.
Yeah,
and they didn't, which is it is what it is. But I'm kind of over it now.
Yeah. So let's just give our overall thoughts, sort of, because it's happened. This was a team that was 11th place, about 2 weeks left in the season, 2 tournaments left in the season, and we managed to get 7th. We managed to beat some really good teams in London, who's now a top 4 team, and then Florida, who's arguably previously a top 4 team. What are sort of your closing thoughts, man? Like, this is it for Ultra. For season 1, this is it. We're done, right? I mean, I can't wait for season 2, but season 1's in the books.
You know what? I think I'm pretty happy with the season overall. I think we showed a lot of resilience in being able to try out different things and different rosters, and we became, really good towards the end. And I'm disappointed with Champs, but that's a good thing. That's a good thing that I'm disappointed with Champs, is because it means that I had high expectations for the team. And you don't want a fan to have low expectations. You don't want a fan to be, going to the game like, whatever, like they lose, because, you've been so emotionally down so often. And, I could be alluding to another Toronto franchise at the moment that, I just don't have any expectations for. Nope. Like, who I don't care if they lose against Dallas, because, I know they're pretty sure they are. But so I'd say the overall season was amazing. First year in the game, your roster doesn't always work out at the start of the season when you try, but they try different things and they found something that worked, and then they made it work further on.
Yeah. And I think the important thing for me is this was a team where we had Dominique on, and she literally was like, we're going to give this like one more tournament, and if it doesn't work, we're blowing it up. And then we got top 4. So the team stayed together. It was even before Kleenex came on. This was a team where there was definitely points in the year where my position was blow it up, right? Like my position was, it's fine. You gave it a shot. You tried the 10-person roster. It didn't work out. Start anew in 2021. That is no longer the case, right? That's no longer the mentality I think a lot of people have about this team, which I think is really important. I think it became pretty clear by the end of it that there's a championship team to be built with certain pieces from this team. I mean, we'll get into a whole roster video in another week, so stay tuned for that. We're not going to get too much into it now, but man, I think Kleenex and Camry really established themselves as pieces who I think you can build around and create this sort of championship roster. I think, Method's a little bit inconsistent at champs, but when he's on, he's on. And I think Bance is a really good sort of like safe person to have either like on the bench or like as your 5th person, right? Because what he brings in the in-game leadership role and all those sort of things. So I think that there's a championship team in here if you surround them with the right pieces. So I think I'm extremely excited for the offseason. I cannot wait for 2021. And I think that if you're a Toronto Ultra fan, there's a lot of positivity on there. There's a lot to be optimistic about going into next year. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't the disaster I thought it was going to be, like you said, as some other franchises. But there's a point in time where I thought that all hope was lost, and that's no longer the case. So I think that this was exactly what our ceiling was, and we performed adequately to the team that we had.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, I'm really looking forward to the offseason in 2021. So, and moving on now, I know we previewed champs or the Final Four and champs a little bit last week.
Yeah.
But we'll talk a little bit more about, who we think is going to win because, as you guys know, our predictions weren't 100% accurate.
I mean, our winners were. We had Dallas and FaZe. Yeah, Dallas and FaZe coming out of the winners bracket. We got that right.
Yeah, but London and Huntsman are coming out of the losers bracket.
I think we had a Huntsman too. I had a Huntsman and Toronto, actually. I was almost right. I almost big brained this. I had a Huntsman versus Ultra in the losers bracket, and man, was I close.
It's so hard to see because London got there because they beat us.
Exactly. So, I mean, if we had won that, I would have fucking had a perfect bracket, but unfortunately, I didn't. But yeah, Chris. So who do you think takes those? Who do you think wins winners? Who do you think wins losers? And then who do you think comes back?
You know what? I think that Chicago Huntsman takes it. And I'm making a big change because I think I've seen Huntsman, have the juice in past games against I think OGLA and who they play against in the winners bracket before they go to
FaZe.
No, but who they win to go to FaZe?
Oh, they beat New York.
Yes, not like the top 4 team, but I think they've kind of shown how well they can clutch up games when they get to that point. With I forgot who it was against OGLA, just clutching up that last little bit. Envoy
clutched up. One of the greatest games I've ever seen as a non-Ultra fan.
Exactly. Envoy and then Scump going 12 and whatever against I think
New York.
I think New York. I think they have this weird little clutch factor or this little extra flip that you can switch when you're down and out. And I think that that's going to be the X factor that a team needs to be able to win it. I think that if they can face, let's say, FaZe in the final, if they get ahead of FaZe, I think FaZe may get down on their desk. They're going to step on their necks. If they go down a FaZe and FaZe is up, I think they still have that little switch they can turn on to really win it.
Yeah, you heard it here first. An extra flip they can switch. Boom. I know. No, I kind of agree, actually. I think Huntsman really impressed me. I think their clutch factor is just impeccable, right? I think they had 3 map 5s. I think New York went to a map 5, Atlanta went to a map 5, and OGLA went to a map 5. Now they won, they lost 1 versus FaZe, but that was a really close one too, and they clutched up the other 2. So I'm going to change my tune a little bit. Both of us predicted Atlanta FaZe. It's interesting that you have Huntsman beating FaZe in the final. I actually have Huntsman losing to Dallas in the final, man. When I watched Dallas just slay us out and sort of the dominant performance that they were putting up, man, Dallas is just so good. They're just such a well-rounded team too. With Shotzi and Hoot, they have they can do the respawns and the domination. They're really smart players, and then Illy's so good on S&D with Crim and Clay. They have the leadership too, the experience. They've been there. They can clutch up when they need to. Right down 2-1, and they just showed everybody that there was no way they were going to lose that game versus the Ultra. And So I think they beat FaZe, and I kind of agree that I think the Huntsmen can clutch up and take FaZe too, because I don't know if FaZe has that like clutch factor. Like, yeah, they won it last year, but like Scump and Formal and them have been it for so long, right? For so long. And then so did RCDs and Pristini, right? They also won it with Simp and them last year as well. So I think it's going to be a Dallas versus Huntsman final, Crim 6 versus Scump, and I can't wait. And honestly, just Dallas has impressed me so much. So I'm actually going to pick them. And that's no disrespect to London. London can do it. Wuskin's incredible. Shawnee was having some of the best, Call of Duty I've ever seen him play. But I think it's going to be Dallas. They've impressed me.
Yeah, I think that's a totally good and valid argument. And I think with that, is there anything else you want to say before you wrap up here?
No, guys, just, Thank you so much for following us throughout the year. I know we started a little bit late, but I hope that, we promise we're going to be here, all of the offseason and all of next year, bringing in your Ultra recaps and breaking the games down and whatnot. I think that I've enjoyed Call of Duty so much more than I thought I was going to. And this isn't just because Ultra is doing a lot better than I thought they were going to do. This is because I generally think that this esport is, once you like understand it, man, is it exciting. So I can't wait. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching us and supporting us. Please hit that like button, subscribe, give us a comment, let us know your thoughts. We always love to have that sort of debate in the comment section down below. And stay tuned for more Call of Duty coverage coming your way in the off seasons as well as 2021. So thank you and enjoy.
Exactly.
How about you? Any closing thoughts?
No, just get ready for our roster selection coming up.
Hey, Roster Mania, baby, it's coming. All right, guys, thank you for watching, and as always, enjoy.